I reviewed the marriage registration form and submitted it to the clerk along with my fiancé, Chris. The clerk said, "Let me check this for you," and took the form. While we waited, Chris walked over to his family, looking happy. I thought about how we could build a happy family together and get along well with his family. But then I overheard Chris and his family talking, and their words shocked me. They said things like, "Once she submits the marriage form, she won't be able to escape us easily, and I finally got my servant. I won't have to work now." They even praised Chris for doing well and talked about how they could live luxuriously. One of them said, "I'll let her do all the housework and we can live gracefully from now on." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was frozen in surprise. The clerk, who had heard the conversation too, looked at me with wide eyes. Maybe Chris and his family were so excited that they didn't realize they were speaking so loudly. The clerk then whispered to me, "There's no problem with the form, but I'll give this back to you," and gently handed it back. I whispered, "Thank you so much," and put the form in my bag. My name is Mary, and I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I worked really hard to get into a top high school and university, and then landed a job at one of the world's most famous AITA companies. I focused on doing my best at work, and I was promoted to section manager by the age of 30. The more I worked, the more results I saw, which I enjoyed because it suited my personality. But sometimes I feel lonely. It's been a long time since I had a boyfriend. When I see my friends getting married or having babies and looking happy, I sometimes feel sad and wonder if I'll be alone for the rest of my life. "Mary, what are you thinking about?" my coworker Justin asked. "Oh, hi Justin. Did I look like I was deep in thought?" I replied. "You looked like something was bothering you," he said. "It's nothing, but thank you for worrying," I responded. Justin walked away, but I started to think, maybe I really do need to find a boyfriend. I asked a friend for advice, and she threw a home party for me. That's where I met Chris. He's the same age as me and also works for an AITA company, so we had a lot in common to talk about. We started dating, and things went smoothly as we got to know each other better and better. Chris is very family-oriented, and I got to meet his family early on. I was often invited to his parents' house for dinner. "Mary, nice to meet you. I'm Chris's mom, Catherine," she introduced herself. "And I'm his dad, Mark," his father said. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mary," I replied. Then his sister joined in. "Hi, I'm Chris's sister, Kate." I didn't know Chris had such a cute girlfriend. His family seemed really nice. "Do you have any foods you don't like?" they asked. "No, I can eat anything," I said. "Chris used to be a picky eater," his mom mentioned. "Oh, that was just a childhood thing," Chris chimed in. "What did Chris hate?" I asked. "He hated broccoli and asparagus. I had to shred them and hide them in meat," his mom said, laughing. "Mom, stop it. You're embarrassing me," Chris protested. They were such a friendly and happy family, just what I always wanted. When I was in middle school, my parents got divorced. I lived with my dad, while my sister lived with our mom. My sister and I didn't get along very well, so I wasn't too sad when we were separated. The reason for my parents' divorce was that they both loved their work and didn't want to handle the housework. In the end, they decided to split up, each taking one child, so they could equally share the responsibilities. Both my dad and mom had high incomes, so we never had any trouble living. My dad wasn't indifferent, but he mostly let me be on my own and gave me a lot of freedom. I really wanted to become independent, and I thought the best way to do that was to get into a top university and land a good job. So I studied really hard. Eventually, I was able to get a job at one of the most famous AITA companies in the world. But even with all that success, I had never really felt the warmth of family love. That's why I adored Chris's warm and close-knit family. "Think of us as your other family," Chris once told me. I guess he said that because he knew about my situation. I was regularly invited to his parents' house for dinner. His sister Kate even started treating me like a real sister and often asked me for advice about work. After graduating from university, Kate got a job at a company that was pretty awful, long hours, no overtime pay, and way too much work. So she quit and started working part-time at an ice cream shop. Now she's looking for a full-time job and often asks for my advice. "Thank you, Mary. This is really helpful," she would say. "It's okay, Kate. I like talking to you," I'd reply. "Mary, you're like a real big sister." "I've always wanted a big sister," Kate told me one day. Oh, that's so sweet. My own sister never thanked me for anything and wasn't as nice as you at all, I said. Really? Then let's go to lots of places together, Kate suggested. Great, let's do that. I agreed. Wow, I'm so happy. There are so many cafes and restaurants I want to visit with you, Kate said excitedly. Okay, then let's go when we both have a day off, I replied. Yay, I'm so excited. Kate was really cute, and I was glad to get to know her better. It was around this time that Chris surprised me by proposing. Mary, will you marry me? I want to build a warm family with you, he said. I was so happy when Chris proposed to me, and we immediately told his family the good news. Oh, you're finally getting married, his mom exclaimed. Finally, Chris proposed to you. And now you're going to be my sister-in-law, Kate added excitedly. His family was thrilled, and they started talking about the wedding plans right away. Chris looked overjoyed too. That day, we had dinner with them and then headed home. When I got back to work, everyone congratulated me. Mary, are you getting married? They asked. Yes, I'm finally getting married, I replied, feeling happy and proud. Congratulations, they all said, and I thanked them. On our next day off, we were invited to Chris' parents' house again, this time for lunch. On the way there, Chris said, I have something important to tell you later. Okay, I replied, curious but expecting it to be something good since Chris seemed so happy. When we arrived at his parents' house, there was a stuffed turkey on the table. Are you celebrating something today? I asked. Chris's mom smiled and said, I'm just so happy thinking that Mary is going to be my daughter-in-law. She looked so sweet and shiny with joy as she said it. We opened some cold beers and enjoyed the turkey, chatting happily. After a while, Chris suddenly said, Oh, I almost forgot to tell you something important. I'm thinking of going to the marriage registry today. What? I was taken back. Actually, I've already prepared the paperwork, Chris continued. I was surprised. Sure, we were going to the marriage registry eventually. But why today? Is today a special day? I asked. No, it's not like that, Chris said. Then why are we doing it today? I asked, still confused. I just wanted to get it done as soon as possible, he explained. But why not wait until after the wedding? I suggested. The wedding is still a long way off, he replied. We had already visited several restaurants and found one we really liked for our wedding. However, it was a very popular place, so we could only reserve it for a few months later. I think we should wait until after the wedding, I suggested, feeling unsure about rushing things. No, I want to be married to you as soon as possible, Chris insisted. The sooner the better for us too, his mom added. Mary, I agree with Chris. You should get married as soon as possible, his dad chimed in. We had been planning to find an apartment that was conveniently located between both our workplaces. But then Chris said, yeah, about that. We were thinking of moving into this house together. What? I was completely surprised. I had assumed we'd be living on our own. I thought we'd be getting our own place. I mean, it takes time to find an apartment, and we also have to prepare for the wedding. Chris explained. That's why I think it would be better to live at my parents' house first and take our time finding an apartment. Chris might have had a point, but the idea of living with his family made me uneasy. I didn't have a great experience living with my own family, and although Chris's family members were all nice, I wondered if it would really be okay. Chris's mom reassured me, we're already ready to welcome you into our family. We understand your situation, so you don't have to worry about anything. After hearing that, I thought I might be able to live with them. Okay, thank you so much, I said, feeling a bit more comfortable. Then let's go to the marriage registry, Kate suggested, and everyone, including Chris and his parents, agreed. I finally said, okay, let's do it, and we all decided to go to the marriage bureau together. Kate, who hadn't been drinking, drove us there. I realized I might have had a bit too many beers and was feeling a little nervous. But as soon as we arrived, I felt the need to go to the bathroom. Before submitting the marriage registration form, I went to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw Chris's parents and Kate chatting happily. I rechecked the form and then submitted it to the clerk along with Chris. The clerk said, "Let me check this for you," and took the form. While we waited, Chris walked over to his family, looking pleased. I felt hopeful about building a happy life with him and getting along well with his family. Just as I was thinking this, I overheard parts of their conversation that filled me with dread. One of them said, once they submit the marriage registration form, she won't be able to escape us easily. Another added, I finally got my servant. I won't have to work anymore. Someone praised Chris, saying, you did really well. From now on, we can live luxuriously. I want a new purse, someone said, and another added, I want golf clubs. We can let her do all the housework. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What were they talking about? I froze in shock, and I noticed the clerk had also heard their conversation. Her eyes were wide with surprise. Maybe Chris and his family were so excited that they didn't realize they were speaking so loudly. The clerk looked at me and whispered, there's no problem with the form, but I'll give this back to you. She gently handed the marriage registration form back to me. I whispered, thank you so much, and quickly put it in my bag. Just as I did, Chris returned. Has it been submitted with no problems? He asked. Yes, I lied, then added, let's go home. I followed Chris and his family to the car. They had always seemed like a warm, friendly family, but now they just looked frightening. They drove me home that day, but the next morning, Chris told me that since we were married, we should start living together at his parents' house. I agreed and decided to move in, determined to find out if what I overheard was really true. Of course, I pretended that I had canceled my apartment plans and assured Chris that I would handle everything myself. I mentioned that I would sell my belongings to a recycling company soon. With that settled, we moved into his parents' house. However, as soon as I arrived, Chris's family's attitude changed dramatically. Mary, I manage all the finances in this house, his mother said sternly. So you need to put your entire salary into the household account. What? I was shocked, but Chris nodded in agreement. My mom will take care of it. She'll give you money for lunch and anything else you need. And she'll handle the household finances efficiently, Chris explained as if it were no big deal. Really? I asked, still trying to process what was happening. That's right, so don't worry about handing over your entire salary, his mom continued. Oh, and one more thing, you'll be responsible for all the housework. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do you have a problem with that? His mom asked sharply. I'm working, so it's a bit much to handle all the housework on top of that, I replied, trying to reason with them. Oh, are you such a coward that you won't even try? She snapped back. What? I was stunned. Shut your mouth and start doing the chores, Chris's dad said, giving me the scariest look I'd ever seen from him. Even Kate chimed in, I like your brown bags. Buy some for me too. Chris added, Mary, you're now my wife and a member of this family, so you need to do everything we tell you to. At that moment, I realized this was their true nature. They had been planning to take advantage of me from the start. I don't want to, I said firmly. What? What'd you just say? Chris's mom asked, glaring at me. I can't accept everything you just told me, I replied, standing my ground. I won't do all the housework, and I won't give you my entire salary, I said firmly. When I said this, Chris and his family became furious. Hey Mary, what are you talking about? You're our daughter-in-law now. Just do what we tell you, Chris's mom said, her voice full of anger. Your only value is to make our lives easier, added Chris's dad. I'm not your daughter-in-law, I replied, standing my ground. What? Chris's mom was stunned. You had that conversation at the marriage bureau, didn't you? I asked. After what I overheard, I decided not to register our marriage. Their faces turned pale. Oh no, did you really not submit the form? Chris's mom asked urgently. I already threw the marriage registration form in the trash, I said. I can't live with people who take advantage of me. Let's just break up. Chris slumped to the floor, clearly devastated. I left the house immediately. It turned out that Chris's family had already planned an overseas trip for the four of them, including booking a luxury hotel and first-class airline tickets, all based on the assumption they'd be getting my salary. Since I broke up with Chris the day before the trip, they had to pay a lot of cancellation fees. Chris asked me to cover the cancellation fees, but of course I refused and blocked him from contacting me. Now, they're about $50,000 in debt and are all arguing with each other. It seems their only connection was money, and their relationships weren't very strong. Mary, did you cancel the marriage? Justin asked when I ran into him. Oh, Justin, you heard about that already, I said. Rumors spread fast, he noted, looking amused. You can laugh if you want, I said. I'm not laughing, I'm actually happy, Justin admitted, though he looked a bit embarrassed. "Why's that?" I asked. "Because it means I have a chance," he replied. A few months later, Justin asked me out and recently proposed to me. I'm so happy now. Chris and his family were only nice to me at the beginning to take advantage of me. I'm relieved I discovered their true nature before we got married. I was curious about what happened next with Justin, but for now, I wish Mary a happy marriage this time around. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.
The day Richard threw the crumpled divorce papers at my feet is a day I'll never forget, like a scar that won't fade. I stood there, shocked and unable to move, as he said those chilling words. "I've sold the house because I'm moving in with her. It's over, Anna." I was 34 then, taking care of our son Jason, who was only 13. Our life as I knew it fell apart in that moment. I didn't see it coming and I wasn't ready for what would happen next. Richard and I met when I was just 19. He was 26, working at a big company. I was a receptionist at a smaller part of the company. He noticed me and I liked the attention. I was young and he seemed perfect. Our relationship moved quickly. I got pregnant unexpectedly and soon we were married in a simple ceremony. Life seemed uncomplicated back then. I focused on our home and raising Jason. Richard was busy with work and gradually he was around less. I didn't think much about it. I was busy with our son and our home. The day he left, everything fell apart. I had to face the truth about our supposedly happy life. Richard's cheating, his growing distance. The signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. With nowhere else to go, Jason and I moved back to my family home. My sister Laura and her husband weren't welcoming. They made it clear we were a burden, unwanted in their settled life. I felt lost, a high school graduate with little work experience suddenly needing a job to support us. The job market was tough, each rejection hurt. But I had Jason to care for, a young boy facing grown-up problems. In my desperation, I found a job at a call center. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a glimmer of hope in my dark days. The work was hard, long hours, upset customers, constant business. But it gave me purpose again, something I'd lost in all the turmoil. As I started working in the corporate world, I realized how sheltered I'd been. My lack of knowledge, especially about legal things like divorce and alimony, made me vulnerable to Richard's decisions. This realization sparked something inside me. I promised myself I'd never feel so powerless again. I threw myself into learning about the world outside home and family. Watching Jason grow up, I saw how our situation affected him. He became quieter, more serious than other kids his age, with eyes that seemed older than he was. But he was tough, adapting to our new life with a strength I admired. Our journey was just starting, a path full of challenges and discoveries. But through those challenges, I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. And from those discoveries, I found a determination to stand up for ourselves and claim what we deserved. Life at my sister Laura's house reminded me every day of how much we had fallen. Her husband Mark didn't hide his dislike, often saying, "Anna, you need to find your own place soon. We can't keep supporting you forever." The pressure was constant. I looked through job listings every day, and every rejection made me feel worse. But Jason's quiet strength kept me going. Despite everything, he stayed focused on his studies, never giving up. One day I found a job opening at a customer service center. It wasn't fancy, but it was a chance. The interview was nerve-wracking. Sitting there in my old suit with a sparse resume, I felt out of place. "Why are you interested in this job?" the interviewer asked. I wanted to say I have no other option, but instead, I forced a smile and replied, "I'm seeking a chance to learn and develop." To my surprise, they offered me the job. It was a contract role, but it was a beginning. When I told Laura and Mark, I felt a mix of relief and a pang of inadequacy when Mark commented, "Finally, you can start pulling your weight." The job was tough, the fast pace, the constant calls. It was overwhelming, but I pushed through, motivated by Jason's needs and my determination to prove myself. As I settled into the routine, I couldn't stop thinking about my marriage with Richard. How did I miss the signs? The late nights, the mysterious disappearances, the hushed phone conversations. I ignored them, believing in a facade of happiness. But the truth was, Richard had a double life, and I was just a convenient cover. Realizing the truth was hard to accept. It sparked anger toward Richard for his betrayal and toward myself for being so trusting. But a conversation with a coworker changed everything. She, a single mother like me but more knowledgeable, said something that hit home. "Anna, did you receive any alimony or child support? You know you're entitled to it, right?" I was shocked. It hadn't even occurred to me. Richard had left us with nothing, and I had simply accepted it. That moment made me see how little I knew and how unprepared I was. Determined to set things right, I started educating myself. I read books, searched online, anything I could find about divorce and family law. The more I learned, the clearer it became how Richard had manipulated the situation. One day I got a call from Jason's school. He'd been in a fight. My heart sank as I hurried there, fearing the worst. But what I found wasn't a troubled kid, it was a young man pushed too far. "He called you a gold digger," Jason said, eyes blazing with anger. "He said you were after Dad's money. I couldn't let him say that about you." I was stunned. Our pain and shame had reached my son, poisoning his world. It was a wake-up call. I couldn't let Richard's betrayal define us anymore. That night, watching Jason sleep, I made a promise. I would fight back. I would reclaim what Richard took from us, not just for me, but for Jason too. It was time for Richard to face the consequences. The small apartment we moved into was a world away from our old home with Richard, but it was ours. The walls were empty, furniture basic, but it marked a fresh beginning. Jason adjusted quickly, surprising me with his resilience. He threw himself into school with a passion that impressed and worried me. "I want to do well, Mom, for us," Jason would say, his determination shining through his words. I'd been at the call center for a year now. The job was still tough, but I'd grown more confident, handling challenges better. It was a small sense of achievement, but it reminded me I wasn't just Richard's ex-wife. One evening at dinner, Jason looked up and asked, "Mom, do you ever think about Dad?" His question caught me off guard. We rarely talked about Richard. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way you might think. I think about what he did to us, how he left us with nothing." Jason's eyes hardened. "I hate him for that. He thinks he can walk away without any consequences." His words struck a chord in me. His anger and sense of injustice resonated deeply with my own feelings. "You're right," I replied firmly. "He shouldn't get away with it." In the following weeks, I delved into research about divorce and family law. I learned about alimony, child support, and the legal options available. The more I understood, the more empowered I felt. Then, a breakthrough happened. I discovered that in cases of infidelity, the betrayed spouse could seek alimony even years after the divorce under certain circumstances. This revelation was eye-opening. Richard's cheating had left traces. The late-night calls, secretive behavior, it all pointed to his betrayal. Buoyed by this revelation, I sought out a lawyer. She was understanding, her eyes showing empathy beyond professional duty. "You have a case," she confirmed, "but it won't be easy. Are you prepared for this?" I nodded, my determination solid. "I'm ready, for myself and for Jason." The lawyer outlined our strategy. We would pursue alimony, highlighting Richard's infidelity and his failure to support us financially after the divorce. It would be a challenging process, but I was prepared. I had to be. Jason stood by me, his quiet strength a reassuring presence. "We'll get through this, Mom," he assured me. "We're in this together." On the day we filed the lawsuit, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anxiety, but most of all, a sense of justice. Richard had hurt us, and it was time for him to face the consequences. As the legal battle unfolded, I braced myself for the pushback. Richard wasn't going to accept this quietly, but I wasn't the naive woman he left behind. I had grown stronger, more knowledgeable, and I was prepared to fight. The legal battle against Richard opened a Pandora's box. The lawyer's investigation uncovered more than just infidelity. It exposed a web of lies and deceit that Richard had spun over the years. One afternoon in the lawyer's office, she handed us a file. "This is more than I expected," she said gravely. Richard wasn't just cheating, he was leading a double life. The documents painted a damning picture. Bank statements, credit card bills, and photos revealing Richard's secret life. He lived lavishly while neglecting his family. "Take a look at this," the lawyer pointed to a photo. It showed Richard, smiling and carefree with another woman, his arm around her. My heart sank at the sight, but I faced it head-on. This was the harsh truth. Jason's expression hardened as he examined the evidence. "How could he do this to us? To you?" His voice betrayed a mix of anger and disbelief. "We'll hold him accountable," I asserted firmly. "He won't escape this." The legal battle took its toll. Richard's lawyers were aggressive, trying to undermine me, portraying me as a bitter ex-wife. But I stood my ground, supported by Jason and our lawyer, bolstered by the evidence we had gathered. Then came the day of the deposition. Richard sat opposite us, looking confident. However, that confidence faded as our lawyer began presenting the evidence. "Mr. Richard, can you explain these expenses?" she asked, her tone sharp, sliding the bank statements across the table. Richard glanced at the documents, and I sensed a flicker of panic. "These are personal expenses. They're unrelated to my marriage." "And these photos," the lawyer continued, her gaze steady, "they tell a different story." Richard's facade began to crack. He stumbled for words, his composure slipping. "It was just a fling, nothing serious." Jason cut in, his voice cold. You destroyed our family for a fling." The tension in the room was palpable. Richard's lawyer tried to intervene, but it was too late. The evidence was damning, Richard's excuses weak and unconvincing. Leaving the deposition, I felt a mix of satisfaction and vindication. Richard had been exposed as a cheater. But the legal battle wasn't over. Richard would surely fight back. Yet I was prepared. For the first time, I felt empowered. No longer a victim of Richard's betrayal, I was fighting back for Jason and for the future we deserved. As the lawsuit dragged on, each hearing more contentious than the last, an unexpected twist emerged. One evening, Jason came home with an unusual expression. "Mom, you won't believe what happened today," he said, a mix of disbelief and amusement in his voice. "What happened?" I asked eagerly. "I had a job interview today at a pharmaceutical company. Guess who the HR manager is?" I felt a shiver down my spine. "Not Richard?" Jason nodded grimly. "Yes, Richard. He didn't recognize me at first. I guess he's forgotten his own son's face." The irony was bitter. Richard, who had abandoned his family for his career, was now unwittingly interviewing his own son. "What did you do?" I asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. A cold determination flashed in Jason's eyes. I played along at first, but then he paused, a smirk appearing on his face. In the end, I couldn't resist. I asked him if the company condones affairs. The look on his face was unforgettable when he realized who I was. I felt torn between shock and a strange satisfaction. Richard, confronted by the son he had abandoned, in a place where he typically felt powerful. "What did he say?" I asked eagerly. "He denied it, of course," Jason replied, so I pressed on. I asked him how he could interview me after tearing our family apart for his own selfish reasons. Jason's voice held bitterness, but also a hint of triumph. He was speechless. I left him there, grappling with his guilt. The revelation hit me hard. Richard was finally facing the consequences of his actions in a way he never expected. It was a twist of fate that felt almost poetic. "But why did you go to that interview?" I asked, still trying to process it all. Jason's answer was simple yet profound. "I needed to confront him face to face, to show him that despite everything, he didn't break us. We're still standing, and we're fighting back." The aftermath of Jason's encounter with Richard at the job interview stirred waves in our ongoing legal battle. Richard, now confronted by his own son, grew more desperate in his defense. Our lawyer, Miss Carter, called us for a strategy meeting. "Richard's lawyers are pushing for a settlement," she informed us in her office, "but considering the evidence and Jason's testimony, I believe we can aim higher. What do you want to do?" I turned to Jason, wanting his input. His expression was resolute, his determination unwavering. "We press forward," he declared firmly. "He needs to face consequences, not just financially, but morally as well." Miss Carter nodded firmly. "Okay, let's get ready for the next meeting. It's going to be tough, but we have the truth on our side." The meeting turned out to be really hard. Richard's lawyer tried to make him seem sorry for his actions, but Miss Carter kept going, showing proof of how Richard had lied and not taken care of his family. Richard went up to speak, seeming both stubborn and fake sorry. "I'm sorry for hurting my family," he said, but his voice didn't sound like he meant it. "But I think the deal they're offering is fair." His words didn't feel true, and I got really mad. How could he act like he was the one who was hurt after everything he'd done? That's when Jason spoke out. "Fair and just?" he challenged, his voice strong yet filled with emotion. "Was it fair to leave your family behind, to lie and cheat while we struggled to make ends meet?" The courtroom went quiet, Jason's words hanging heavily in the air. Richard glanced at his son, perhaps feeling a flicker of guilt, but it was too late for regrets. After thinking it over, the judge decided in our favor. The settlement was much more than what Richard had offered, a clear recognition of the harm he had caused. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a sense of justice. It wasn't just about the money, it was about holding Richard responsible for his actions. "We did it, Mom," Jason said, a small smile forming. "We finally made him face the consequences." The victory in court against Richard wasn't just about winning, it was about restoring our dignity and beginning to heal. But the story didn't stop there. The fallout from Richard's actions began to affect his life, both at work and personally. One evening, a few weeks after the trial, I got a call from a former colleague who worked with Richard at the pharmaceutical company. "Anna, have you heard about Richard?" she asked, sounding surprised and intrigued. "No, what happened?" I replied, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. "He's been demoted," she disclosed. "After your lawsuit, the company did their own investigation. Turns out he was using company resources for personal matters. They've reassigned him to a remote factory, basically ending his career." I sat in silence, shocked. Richard, once a rising star at his company, was now facing the consequences of his actions in a fitting manner. His career, something he valued above us, was crumbling. Jason listened quietly as I shared the news. "Good," he said simply, though his eyes showed a deeper satisfaction. "He's getting what he deserves." But the consequences continued. Richard's social circle, once close-knit, began to distance themselves. His reputation, damaged by the lawsuit and company investigation, became a liability. I heard from different sources about Richard's downfall, how he had to sell his apartment to cover the settlement and legal costs, and how his second wife, the woman he left us for, struggled with their reduced lifestyle. As I thought about these events, it became clear that Richard had brought this upon himself. His selfish and deceitful choices had led to his downfall. Reflecting on it all, I saw it wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about the universe correcting a wrong. Jason and I discussed this one evening, our conversation more contemplative than vengeful. "Do you pity him?" Jason asked, his tone even. I hesitated, pondering his question. "No," I replied finally, "but I do feel a sense of closure. It's like a chapter has finally ended, allowing us to start fresh." Jason nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's time to move forward, focus on our own lives." With the legal battle settled and Richard facing the consequences of his actions, Anna and Jason looked ahead to the future, feeling the weight of the past gradually lift from their shoulders. They had endured hardships and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the next phase of their lives. As the legal issues faded into the background and Richard dealt with the fallout, a new sense of freedom settled over us. It was like we had been freed from a dark cloud that had hung over us for years. Our modest apartment, once a symbol of our struggles, began to feel more like a home. We redecorated, making it a reflection of our fresh start. The walls, once bare, now held artwork, and shelves were filled with books and cherished memories. Jason, now more relaxed and focused, was excelling in his studies. His earlier determination, fueled by anger and a quest for justice, had evolved into a genuine love for learning. "I'm thinking of applying for a research internship this summer," he shared one evening, his eyes shining with excitement. "That's fantastic, Jason," I replied, feeling proud. "You've put in so much effort for this." Our conversations had shifted from dwelling on the past to discussing the future, what we had endured and what we hoped to achieve. We talked about travel, the places we dreamed of visiting, and the experiences we wanted to have. One day, while we sat enjoying coffee in our newly decorated living room, I brought up a topic that had been on my mind. "Jason, have you considered dating? You know, meeting someone special." He chuckled, slightly embarrassed. "I've been so focused on school and everything else, but yeah, I think I'm ready to start dating," Jason said. I smiled, feeling glad to see him thinking about normal, happy parts of life after all we'd been through. It felt like a victory in itself. Meanwhile, I had found a new sense of purpose beyond my job at the call center. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping other women who had faced similar challenges. Sharing my story and offering support brought a deep sense of fulfillment I hadn't experienced before. One evening, as Jason and I sat on our balcony under the stars, a peaceful feeling surrounded us. "Mom, do you ever think about Dad anymore?" Jason asked softly. I paused, thinking about his question. "Sometimes," I admitted, but not with anger or resentment. "I think about how much we've grown since then, how he was a part of our journey but not the whole story." Jason nodded in understanding. "Yeah," he agreed, "I feel the same. He's just a chapter in our past." We sat quietly for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. The journey we'd been through wasn't one we'd chosen, but it had shaped us in ways we never expected. My name is Alina. I'm 23 years old and in my last year of college, aiming to become a journalist. But today, instead of looking forward to graduation, I'm stuck in a terrible situation. We just buried my dad less than a day ago. My dad, Martin, was always traveling for work, but he still made me feel loved. Now, the house feels so empty without him. It's a constant reminder of the gap he left behind. As I stand in the entrance of our home, still feeling numb from the funeral, my mom, Claudia, and my sister, Victoria, quickly share their plans. Their words hit me hard, like a loud, sad bell marking the end of our family's togetherness. "We're going to sell this house," Claudia says, her eyes cold despite her pretending to be sad. "Start looking for a new place, Elena. You need to move out soon." I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. Before I can even process my dad's death, my mom and sister are already thinking about money and what they can gain from it. It feels like a huge betrayal. "You don't think you're entitled to anything, do you?" Victoria taunts, with her boyfriend, Jan, laughing beside her. Their cruel amusement makes me furious. I shouldn't be hearing these words, especially now when the pain is so fresh. I never understood their greed and obsession with wealth and appearances. I was always the odd one out in the family, too serious and studious. Elena the dreamer, they used to mock. And now, faced with their scheming, all the years of indifference and mockery boil over. "You're the worst," I shout, unable to hold back my anger. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you." The bell rings, cutting through my outburst. Annoyed at the interruption, I wipe away my angry tears and open the door. A man in a dark suit stands there, holding a briefcase, and his face looks vaguely familiar. "My condolences," he says solemnly. "May I come in?" Who is this stranger, showing up at the worst possible time with such a serious tone? I'm not ready to deal with anyone else right now, but something in his eyes tells me this isn't just a courtesy visit. I step aside and let him in, wondering what this means for our already fragile family. The echo of my father's laughter used to fill our home, softening the sting of my mother and sister's harsh words. Now the walls seem to close in on me, mixing memories of their hurtful comments with the emptiness his death has left. I always found comfort in my studies, hoping they would lead me to a meaningful life, away from the shallow desires that drove Claudia and Victoria. But as I sit at the dining table, it's hard to focus on anything but the void Martin's passing has created. Silent meals have become the new normal since Dad got sick and passed away. Victoria is always on her phone, and Claudia flips through high-fashion magazines, completely detached from our reality. Their latest plan to sell our home and leave me behind was the final blow to our family bonds. They seemed so eager to chase their dreams of luxury condos and designer lives that nothing else mattered. Dad had been our anchor, and I'd hoped for at least a semblance of unity after he was gone. But now, seeing their blatant opportunism, the illusion of family was shattered, and something inside me snapped. I was tired of being the outsider, the one who cared. I was ready to walk away from it all. Lost in these thoughts, the doorbell rings, a sound that now only means more disruption and bad news. At the door stands a man from my father's past, someone whose ties to our family had faded over time. "Good evening," he greets me. "I need to speak with you about your father's affairs." His formal tone feels out of place in our messy living room, a stark reminder of our family's discord. I nod and gesture for him to sit down. Claudia and Victoria peek out from the kitchen, their curious faces showing irritation. The man pulls out a stack of papers from his briefcase, his expression serious. "I'm Mr. Adams, your father's attorney. He entrusted me with his will and some final instructions," he explains, adjusting his glasses with a seriousness that hints at significant news. Claudia leans forward, visibly intrigued, while Victoria tries to appear nonchalant but stays close by. As Mr. Adams prepares to speak, I steel myself for what's coming next, unsure of the impact it will have but certain our family dynamics are on the brink of change once again. The room fills with tension as Mr. Adams clears his throat and unfolds the document containing my father Martin's final wishes. Claudia and Victoria lean forward eagerly, their attempts at composure slipping since his passing. "In accordance with your father's wishes," Mr. Adams begins, "I am here to read the will and begin the process of carrying out his instructions." His gaze moves between each of us, perhaps assessing our readiness for what he's about to reveal. I can't shake a sense of dread. Years of living under my mother and sister's expectations had conditioned me to expect little and prepare for disappointment. Yet as the attorney starts to speak, it becomes clear that our expectations are about to be upended. To my daughter Elena, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the family home and all accumulated savings and investments. The room falls into a hushed silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock. Mr. Adams continues reading, but his words barely register with me. All I can hear is the pounding of my heart and a buzzing in my ears. It can't be right. There must be some mistake. Me? I manage to stammer, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. But why? Victoria pushes her chair back abruptly, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger. Claudia, equally stunned, sits frozen, her mouth opening and closing silently. Jen, who had been quietly lingering in the background, steps forward as if to comfort or perhaps restrain Victoria. "This has to be some kind of joke, right?" Jan demands, but Mr. Adams only sullenly shakes his head. "There's no mistake," he assures us. Martin was very clear in his wishes. He believed that Elena, with her principles and dedication, would best honor his legacy and manage his assets responsibly. Claudia finds her voice, her disbelief turning to anger. "But what about us?" she demands sharply, her voice shaking with fury. "Are we supposed to get nothing while she gets everything?" The question lingers in the air, thick with resentment from my mother and sister. I'm speechless, caught between the weight of this unexpected responsibility and the hurt of their obvious creed. Mr. Adams looks at me. Martin had his reasons, which he believed would become clear in time. Right now, we need to discuss the next steps and the details of the estate. As Mr. Adams speaks, I can't help but wonder what my father saw in me, what trust he had placed in my hands, and how I could ever live up to it amidst the wreckage of our family unity. The silence following Mr. Adams's revelation feels as heavy as the sorrow I felt at my father's funeral. Claudia and Victoria's anger fills the room, crashing against my shock like relentless waves against a cliff. For a moment, no one says anything. We're frozen in place, the weight of my father's will slicing through the air like a chill wind. My reasons, Mr. Adams continues, addressing me directly, are explained in a personal letter your father left for you, Elena. I am to give it to you after we finish here. Victoria's voice breaks the silence. There must be some mistake, she protests, her words echoing off the walls, igniting a conflict I have no desire to engage in. Jan puts a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her, but her determination remains unyielding. How can she just inherit everything? Victoria's tone rises sharply, incredulous. And what about us? Are we suddenly strangers he's decided to abandon after everything we've done for him? She wields her words like a weapon, her disbelief escalating into a crescendo of frustration. Claudia's shocked facade gives way to anger. Exactly. There must be some provision for this, some oversight or option to challenge it. This is absurd. Her hands tighten on the chair's arms, her knuckles turning white. I finally speak up, my voice weak even to my own ears. I don't understand. Why would Dad do this? What was he thinking? My mind races with unanswered questions, all leading back to a man I now realize I may never have truly known. Mr. Adams takes off his glasses, rubbing his nose before replying. Martin had his reasons and he wanted you to understand them, in his own words. As for Claudia and Victoria, he turns to them, you have the option to contest the will if you choose. Though Martin's intentions were clear, and his mental soundness when drafting it is well documented. The room erupts into chaos once again, voices overlapping as Claudia and Victoria express their anger and confusion, scrambling to devise a plan. I barely register their words. My thoughts are fixated on the unopened letter, a final message from my father that rests ominously on the table. Taking a deep breath, I reach for it. The paper feels weightless yet heavy in my hands. Unfolding the folds, I prepare to read the words of a man who chose to speak beyond the grave rather than in life, a man who has bequeathed me an inheritance that feels more like a poisoned chalice than a gift of blessings. Alone in my room, with the door closed tight, I unfold the letter with hands that won't stop shaking. Each crease seems to whisper my father's voice, and as his written words emerge, I brace myself for the understanding they bring. Dearest Elena, it starts in his familiar handwriting. As you read this, I am sorry. Sorry I can't say these things to you in person. Sorry for leaving you with a burden no parent should pass to their child. His apology, immediate and heartfelt, cuts through the legal complexities and stark revelations of moments ago. I take a deep breath, finding solace in the scent of ink on paper. Your strength, your discipline, and your vision for a better world have never gone unnoticed by me. In you I saw the promise of a future built on honesty and integrity, far from the grasp of greed. The paper quivers in my grip, stirred not by a draft through the old window, but by the flood of emotions it releases. I continue reading, eyes fixed on the page. Elena, I have not been blind to the dynamics in our household. Your patience and hard work in the face of neglect from your mother and sister have been both my sorrow and my pride. Entrusting you with my entire estate is my attempt to reconcile the unfair burdens you've had to bear. With each sentence, my father weaves a tapestry of his unspoken observations and quiet support. The man who often seemed distant had been watching closely, understanding more than he let on. My only wish is that this inheritance grants you the freedom and resources to pursue the dreams that burn brightly within you. Don't feel obligated to mend what was broken long before you could make a difference. Live the life you deserve, my Elena. Folding the letter, I hold it against my chest, feeling the love etched in ink by a father who recognized his daughter's selfless sacrifices. A surge of determination mingled with the grief that had shadowed me since his passing, washes over me. Leaving the sanctuary of my room, I re-enter the tempest of my fractured family. Mr. Adams meets my gaze with a silent query as I join them. Claudia's stare is sharp and fixed on me, while Victoria paces like a caged animal, her earlier anger now tinged with desperation. It's time we discuss what comes next, I declare, my voice steadier than I feel. Claudia scoffed. What happens next is that we challenge this absurdity. Victoria nodded fiercely. You can't just take everything, Elena. We deserve our fair share. Mr. Adams intervened. Challenging the will would be a lengthy and costly process with no guaranteed outcome. Martin's wishes are clear and well within his rights to enforce. With my father's heartfelt words weighing heavily in my thoughts, I faced them. The family that had never quite felt like a family. It wasn't my decision, but it was his, and I intend to respect it. Tension gripped us all like chains, but amidst the turmoil, one truth remained resolute. I would fulfill my duty, uphold my father's wishes, and perhaps in doing so, forge my own path towards a better future. In the days that followed, our home became a battleground of eerie silences and explosive arguments. Victoria and Claudia scoured legal avenues, consulting lawyers and searching for any loophole to contest the will. They clung stubbornly to the belief that they were entitled to Martin's legacy, viewing it more as their rightful inheritance than a reflection of a man's lifetime of work. Despite their persistent efforts, Mr. Adams remained steadfast, a calm presence amid the storm. His reassurances were a source of solace as we navigated the complexities of settling the estate. "The will is solid, Elena," he would remind me over cups of lukewarm coffee in the formal dining room. "You don't need to be concerned about their threats." Yet despite Mr. Adams's confidence, guilt gnawed at me. Was it fair to accept everything while leaving my mother and sister with nothing? Intellectually, I understood my father had his reasons, but emotionally, I struggled with the lingering sense of familial duty, a desire to mend what was broken, even knowing it might be beyond repair. My days were consumed by preparing for legal challenges and diving into my father's financial affairs. The responsibility felt overwhelming, analyzing numbers, making decisions about properties and investments I had never known existed. Each task felt like navigating through thick fog, but I was determined to honor my father's trust and see it through. Amidst scrutinizing financial statements, my thoughts drifted to the life awaiting beyond these walls, how I could use this inheritance to forge a path that aligned with my values, how I could make a meaningful impact on the world. Amidst the escalating chaos, Claudia and Victoria's true colors emerged in bursts of pettiness and malice. Victoria impulsively claimed sentimental family heirlooms, while Claudia hinted at dark secrets that could tarnish Martin's reputation. Their tactics were aimed at undermining me, testing my resolve, but I had learned to navigate their emotional traps with caution. On a particularly tense evening, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken threats and icy stares, I reached my breaking point. "Enough," I declared, the single word cutting through the tension like a blade. 3 pairs of eyes focused on me, uncertain, wary. "I can't give you what Dad didn't leave for you, but I can help you start fresh somewhere else." Their shock was tangible, a sudden shift in the power dynamics they had been trying to manipulate. "It won't be a life of luxury, but it will be a new beginning." Claudia's laughter cut through the air, devoid of humor. "A consolation prize from our dear Elena. How generous." Her sarcasm stung, but I remained resolute, shielded by years of hardened resolve. Despite the bitterness hanging between us, I stood firm. "It's not about winning or losing, it's a choice. Take it or leave it, but know this, I'm moving forward with or without your approval." Their response was a mixture of silence and reluctant nods, a fragile agreement born from the clash of self-interest and necessity. Retreating to my room, the weight of my father's letter in my pocket reminded me of the path ahead, one where I would navigate not just the inheritance, but also discover who I would become because of it. Days turned into weeks filled with meetings with Mr. Adams and navigating the complexities of managing my inheritance. Claudia and Victoria, begrudgingly accepting my offer, began their search for a more modest home. The tension eased somewhat, yet a coldness lingered in the air deeper than the approaching winter. It was a time of solitude amid chaos, the house growing emptier with each packed box and removed piece of furniture. I found solace in my father's study, a haven untouched by time, a capsule of the past where family tensions once simmered beneath the surface of daily life. The day arrived when Claudia and Victoria left the house for good. With a signed check and a brief farewell, they departed, taking with them remnants of a life forever altered. Standing in the doorway, I watched their car fade around the bend, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was time to focus on the future. With Mr. Adams' guidance, I established a charitable foundation in my father's name, dedicated to providing educational opportunities for disadvantaged students, echoing the aspirations of my younger self who once felt her dreams were out of reach within our home. I enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a journalism program that aligned with my long-held career goals. With my father's network and the resources now available to me, I secured an internship at a respected newspaper. My life became a whirlwind of activity, immersed in pursuing stories and advocating for justice, themes my father and I had often discussed during his frequent business trips, now seeming like distant memories. These days, life keeps me constantly moving, carrying the principles my father instilled in me wherever I go. The house, once confining, has transformed into a true home as I've made it my own. I've repainted walls, rearranged furniture, and welcomed a rescue dog, a lively companion whose barks and playful energy filled the once empty spaces with joy. Rooms that once witnessed family discord now echo with the warmth of friends, colleagues, and shared laughter. Occasionally, I retreat to my father's study, immersing myself in his old letters and weathered books. My gaze often rests on his signature at the bottom of his letter, the final message that reshaped my life. "Duty and love," he wrote, "are the strongest forces we wield. Use them well." In those quiet moments, surrounded by his legacy of words and wisdom, I silently pledged to honor his memory by doing just that.
As I sat at my parents' Thanksgiving table, surrounded by the familiar sights of my childhood home, I felt a rare calm. These visits, now that I was 60, provided a peaceful escape from the tense atmosphere at my own house. My daughter Emma chatted happily with her grandmother, their voices filling the room with joy. It was a stark difference from the quiet, strained conversations I often had with Richard, my husband. Suddenly, my phone buzzed loudly, interrupting the warmth of the moment. Richard's name appeared on the screen, instantly making me uneasy. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself from the table. "Sorry, it's Richard. I'll just take this in the kitchen." But as I stood up, I accidentally activated the speakerphone. "Hey Elaine, enjoying yourself there?" "Well, don't bother coming back." Richard's voice sounded oddly cheerful, echoing through the room. I froze, holding the phone as his words hung in the air. "What do you mean, Richard?" "Oh, I've decided it's time for a change. I've moved Emma's stuff into the house. There's no room for you anymore." The room fell into silence. Emma dropped her fork with a loud clatter, her eyes wide in disbelief. "Richard, what are you talking about?" My voice trembled as I spoke, my heart racing. "It's simple. Emma doesn't want to come home because of you. Without you around, she can live the life she deserves, like when she was younger. So, you need to leave." Emma stood up suddenly, her face flushing with anger. "Dad, what is going on?" "Stay out of this, Emma." Richard's voice cut her off, icy and firm. "This is between me and your mother." My cheeks burned with a mix of shame and anger. "You want me to leave our home just like that?" "Yeah, find some shelter or whatever. It's not my problem." The call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence. My mother reached out, her hand trembling. "Elaine, honey." Before she could finish, Emma burst into bitter laughter. "He's lost it, Grandma. Completely lost it." Inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions, shame, anger, and a strange feeling of freedom. He better be ready. I thought to myself, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. That night, lying in my childhood bed with moonlight casting shadows, memories flooded back. Richard and I hadn't always been distant and cold. There was a time when his eyes held warmth and his touch felt safe. I met Richard when I was in my late 20s. He was charming, confident, and seemed to have all the answers. His charisma drew me in, and within a year of meeting, we were married. A whirlwind romance that felt like a fairy tale. But the fairy tale began to crack soon after Emma was born. Richard adored our daughter, but as his love for her grew, his feelings towards me seemed to diminish. It was as if there was only room in his heart for one person. "Elaine, can't you see? You're suffocating her. Give her space," he would scold. Whenever I tried to be part of Emma's life, his words hurt, though I thought he was just being an overly protective father. As Emma grew older, Richard's resentment towards me deepened. The man who once cherished me now barely acknowledged my existence, except to criticize. "Why can't you be more like Emma? She's only 10 and already so independent," he'd sneer. I remember the night Emma, at 15, won a school award. We were supposed to celebrate together as a family, but Richard turned it into a lecture. "Elaine, why can't you achieve anything like our daughter? You're wasting your life." His words pierced like daggers. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling years of his disdain weighing on me. It wasn't just his words, it was the dismissive looks, the heavy sighs, the way he'd turn away when I entered a room. I had become invisible and insignificant in my own home. That night, lying in the silence, something stirred inside me. Richard's callousness, his disregard for our life together, it ignited a determination in me. I refused to let him erase me from my own story. Turning on my side, I closed my eyes, but sleep eluded me. The shadows seemed to whisper, urging me to rise up, to reclaim myself. And deep down, I knew I was ready to take that step. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound clarity I hadn't felt in years. During breakfast, Mom tried to talk about Richard's call, but I changed the subject. I wasn't ready to confront that issue just yet, and Emma sensed my hesitation and didn't push. As we tidied up, my mind wandered back to the years with Richard. His controlling behavior wasn't limited to our daughter. It permeated every part of our lives, tightening like a vice around my freedom. "Elaine, don't stay late at work. You need to be home to cook," he would insist, dismissing my job at the library that I loved. His rules were unpredictable and meant to keep me off balance. If I wore something he didn't like, he'd scoff. Trying to impress someone, focus on being a better wife and mother. Even my friendships weren't safe. "You spend too much time with Linda Schick." a bad influence, he once said, cutting through years of friendship. But it wasn't just the control, it was the humiliation at social events. He'd undermine me with fake compliments, often in front of Emma. Elaine tries her best, but you know she's not the brightest bulb. He'd laugh, his words a painful reminder of his contempt. Emma witnessed it all. At first she tried to defend me, but Richard's influence was overpowering. "Mom, just ignore him," she'd whisper, her eyes filled with frustration. I couldn't forget the day Emma left for college. Richard glowed with pride, yet there was a coldness in his gaze when he looked at me. "See, Elaine, this is what happens when you raise a child right. She's not like you, thank God." Those words cut deeper than anything, implying I had no role in our daughter's upbringing, that my years of love and sacrifice were worthless. As these memories swirled in my mind, a simmering anger rose within me. Enough was enough. I wouldn't let Richard control my life any longer. The phone call had been the final straw. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. I looked at Emma, seeing her determination reflected back at me. "Emma, there's something important I need to do when we get home. It's going to change everything, but I need you to trust me." Emma nodded firmly. "I'm with you, Mom." Completely. The drive back was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts, knowing we were heading towards a crucial confrontation with Richard. Once home, I excused myself to my room under the guise of unpacking, but really to make a call that would set everything in motion. I dialed the number of a divorce attorney I had discreetly noted down months ago. My hands trembled as the call connected. "Hello, this is Elaine Richardson. I need to discuss filing for divorce." Mr. Adams, the lawyer, was calm and understanding. "I can help you through this, Mrs. Richardson. It sounds like you're dealing with a challenging situation." As I recounted Richard's behavior over the years, Mr. Adams listened attentively. "We can file for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse. It seems like you have a strong case." Feeling empowered, I responded firmly, "I'm proceeding with this, and I want him to face consequences both legally and financially." Mr. Adams reassured me, "We'll work to ensure you receive what you're entitled to." After the call, a mix of fear and exhilaration washed over me. For the first time in years, I was taking charge of my life. Later that evening, Richard returned home, his demeanor smug and victorious. "Back so soon. Realize you have nowhere else to go." His words stung, but I stood my ground. "I went to my parents' house, Richard. Remember the place you practically forced me into?" He scoffed. "I did us a favor. Emma and I are better off without you." "That's where you're mistaken," I said firmly. "Emma isn't a pawn in your games, and I'm not your captive anymore." Richard's face twisted in anger. "What nonsense are you talking? You think you can survive without me?" Meeting his gaze, my resolve remained steady. "Watch me." Emma entered the room, her expression showing determination. "Dad, you've crossed the line. Mom doesn't deserve this." Richard sneered. "Oh, now you're on her side? I thought you understood, Emma. Your mother is worthless." Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "No, Dad. The only worthless thing here is your cruelty. We're done living under your control." As we stood together against Richard's hostility, I knew we had reached a turning point. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my freedom. The morning after our confrontation, the atmosphere in the house felt tense. Richard's usual arrogance was heightened, as if he was challenging us to defy him. While making breakfast, my hands trembled slightly, but my determination held strong. At the table, Richard broke the silence with his usual condescension. "So, Elaine, have you finally realized your place? Ready to beg for forgiveness?" I kept my voice steady. "There's no need for me to beg, Richard. It's you who should be reflecting on your actions." He laughed bitterly. "You've always been out of touch, Elaine, but this is a new low." Emma, who had been quiet until then, spoke up firmly. "Dad, this isn't a joke. Mom is serious about filing for divorce." Richard's face twisted through confusion, disbelief, and then erupted into anger. "Divorce? You think you can just walk away from me after everything I've done for this family?" "It's because of what you've done," I interjected, my voice firm. "Years of belittling, controlling, and humiliating me. I won't tolerate it any longer." Richard slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with rage. "I built this family. Without me, you're nothing." Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. "You didn't build this family, Dad. You've torn it apart. And Mom isn't just something, you've treated her like nothing. His eyes darted between us, a wild intensity growing. You're ganging up on me, your own husband, your own father. This isn't about sides, Richard, I said evenly, the turmoil churned inside me. What you've done is unforgivable. Richard's bitter laugh filled the room. You think you can leave and everything will be fine. You have no clue what's coming. I met his gaze firmly. I know exactly what I'm facing, freedom from you. Emma stood beside me, resolute. We're done with your control, Dad. It's over. Richard abruptly stood, his chair crashing behind him. You'll regret this, both of you. You have no idea what I'm capable of. As he stormed out, the tension he left behind was suffocating. But in that tension, there was also a profound sense of liberation. The battle had begun, and I was ready to fight for my freedom, my dignity, and my daughter's future. The days after our confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind of activity. I met with Mr. Adams multiple times, meticulously planning the divorce proceedings. We'll ensure you receive what's rightfully yours, Elaine, both financially and legally, Mr. Adams assured me. Richard's reaction to the divorce papers was explosive. He barged into the house one evening, papers in hand, his face a mask of rage. You're really going through with this? Do you even understand what you're doing, Elaine? I faced him calmly, despite my inner turmoil. Yes, Richard, I do. For the first time in years, I'm making a decision for myself. Richard laughed mockingly. You really believe you can survive without me? You're nothing without my money, my support. I'm not afraid of being on my own, Richard. I'm more afraid of spending another day under the same roof as you, I replied firmly. Emma, hearing the argument, came downstairs. What's going on? Your mother has lost her mind, Richard sneered. She thinks she can just take half of everything I've worked hard for. It's not just what you've earned, Dad. It's what Mom has endured all these years. She deserves every penny and more. Emma shot back. Richard's gaze hardened. Don't be naive, Emma. This will destroy us all. No, Dad, it will liberate us, especially Mom. As the days stretched into weeks, our home became a tense, silent battlefield. Richard relocated to the guest room, his presence casting a heavy shadow over everything. Despite his attempts to sway me, my decision was resolute. The day of our first court hearing arrived. Sitting in the courtroom, waiting for proceedings to commence, I felt an unusual calmness wash over me. I knew deep down that I was making the right choice, not just for myself, but for Emma too. Richard, however, appeared visibly nervous. When his lawyer broached the topic of a settlement, a small smile crept onto my face. Richard, who had always prided himself on control, was now at the mercy of the legal system. As the judge reviewed our case, Richard grew visibly paler. When the judge turned to me and asked if I wished to add anything, I took a steadying breath. Your Honor, for years I endured emotional abuse and manipulation at the hands of my husband. I seek not vengeance, but justice, for myself and for my daughter. The judge nodded solemnly. I understand, Mrs. Richardson. This court will ensure a fair and just resolution. Leaving the courtroom, I caught Richard's defeated expression. It was enough for me to know that while the battle wasn't over, I had won this initial round. I was prepared for whatever lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, my life felt like it was constantly under scrutiny, analyzed by lawyers and the court. But with each passing day, I felt stronger, more in control of my own destiny. Richard's attempts to intimidate me grew more desperate and less effective over time. The final court hearing became a day I both dreaded and eagerly awaited. As Richard and I sat across from each other in the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on the man I once loved, now a stranger filled with bitterness. The judge's voice was unwavering as he delivered the verdict. The court rules in favor of Mrs. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, you are obligated to pay alimony and half of your assets. Richard's face twisted in shock and anger. He abruptly stood up, his chair crashing to the ground. This is ridiculous. She doesn't deserve a single penny. Mr. Richardson, control yourself, the judge admonished firmly. The court's decision is final. As we exited the courtroom, Richard's parting words dripped with venom. You'll regret this, Elaine. You think you've won, but you haven't seen the end of me. But I no longer feared him. His once cutting words now sounded hollow and powerless. Over the following months, I secured a small apartment near Emma's place. I began a new job at a local library, a place that always brought me solace. The alimony from Richard provided me with a financial independence I hadn't known in years. Emma and I grew closer, our relationship no longer overshadowed by Richard's presence. She flourished in her career and personal life, a stark contrast to the fearful young woman she once was. As for Richard, the last I heard, he was leading a diminished life, his pride and finances greatly reduced. His attempts to reconnect with Emma and me were met with silence. The man who once wielded so much power over us now exists only as a memory, a faint echo of the past. Often, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, gazing out at the tranquil neighborhood. Here, I found a sense of peace and purpose that eluded me for so long. Emma visits frequently, and we share conversations about everything and nothing. Our bond, forged in adversity, has grown unbreakable. Looking ahead, I face the future with hope and a profound sense of freedom. Emerging from the shadows of my past, I've grown stronger and more resilient. I've come to understand that sometimes the most challenging battles lead to the greatest triumphs. As for Richard, he remains nothing more than a distant echo, a reminder of a life I once lived and the strength I discovered in leaving it behind.
It was a calm evening at home until the phone rang and changed everything. Marcus and I were having dinner, salmon and roasted potatoes I cooked, when his phone started buzzing. He looked at the screen and froze. "Who's calling?" I asked. "It's Selena," he said with a serious look. Selena, his 19-year-old daughter from his troubled first marriage, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank. This couldn't be good. Marcus answered the call, and I watched his face closely as he listened, his expression showing worry. After a short conversation, he hung up and let out a deep sigh. "What did she want?" I asked, preparing myself. "She's coming to live with us. Her roommate kicked her out, so she's driving here tomorrow." I dropped my fork, suddenly losing my appetite. "Here? How long?" "She didn't say, but it seems like she's planning to stay for a while," Marcus replied. Panic gripped me. We had worked so hard to create a stable life together. Both of us came from broken families filled with lies and betrayals. It took years of therapy and trust building to heal those wounds. The last thing we needed was a troubled 19-year-old causing more chaos. "Can't her mom take her?" I suggested. Marcus shook his head. "You know how bad things are between them since the divorce." Before I could protest further, we heard the front door open. Our 16-year-old son, Eli, came in from basketball practice, his sweaty hair damp. "Hey, Mom, Dad, what's going on?" he asked, sensing the tension in the room. Marcus managed a weary smile. "We just heard from your sister Selena. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Eli looked surprised. He knew little about Selena beyond the few difficult stories Marcus had shared over the years. Okay," Eli said cautiously. "How long is she going to be here?" "We're not sure yet," Marcus admitted. A tense silence settled over the room, and I could sense the worry spinning through Ellie's mind. Selena's sudden arrival threatened the stability he cherished, but he was too compassionate to voice his concerns. I reached out and squeezed his hand reassuringly before turning to Marcus with determination. "We need to establish clear rules," I insisted. "No taking advantage or expecting a free ride. If she stays here, she has to find a job and contribute." Marcus agreed. "You're right. I'll make sure she understands that when she gets here." As we tidied up after dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that Selena's return wouldn't bring anything positive. The past has a way of resurfacing, no matter how tightly you try to seal it away. The next morning, I woke with a sense of unease. Today was the day Selena would arrive. Marcus had prepared the small guest room for her, though I doubted she'd be pleased with the cramped space. During breakfast, Marcus attempted to reassure Eli. "Don't worry, I'm sure Selena has matured a lot since I last saw her. Let's try to make her feel welcome." Eli nodded, but his apprehension was clear. Around noon, the sound of a car pulling up outside caught our attention. "That must be her," Marcus announced. My heart raced as we approached the front door. A blonde girl emerged from a worn-out hatchback packed with clothes and boxes. She looked nothing like the withdrawn, skinny 13-year-old I remembered from years ago during the divorce hearings. She had grown tall and attractive, dressed in trendy clothes with skillfully applied makeup. However, her bright smile didn't seem to reach her eyes. Marcus greeted her with an awkward hug. "Welcome home, Selena." "Thanks, Daddy," she replied sweetly, though she hadn't made an effort to stay in touch since the divorce. "It's great to see you again." Over the next hour, Selena brought in her belongings, stacking them in the small guest room. Despite the limited space, she refused Marcus's offers to help, sharply instructing him not to touch her things. So much for her growing up, I thought to myself. During dinner, Selena dominated the conversation, talking mostly about herself and subtly making jabs at me. "I can't believe you're still working as a nurse, Lena. Wouldn't you rather do something more interesting?" I held back my response. Nursing was my passion, but Selena clearly didn't respect it. When Eli shared his plans to apply for college scholarships, Selena scoffed. "Good luck getting enough money to go to a decent school." Eli looked hurt. I knew how much effort he had put into maintaining his straight A's and excelling in sports. After dinner, I pulled Marcus aside. "We need to establish some rules for Selena," I insisted. "We can't tolerate this entitled behavior." He sighed. "You're right. I'll talk to her." But in the following days, nothing changed. Selena continued to behave disrespectfully, refusing to find a job or help with anything around the house. My patience wore thin. Then came the breaking point. One evening after work, I returned home to find Selena gone and Eli sitting alone, looking pale. "What's wrong?" I asked him. My heart sank as Eli revealed what had happened. Selena had stolen his laptop and emptied his money jar, which held over $500 he had saved from his job. Eli looked devastated. Anger surged through me. That money represented years of Eli's hard work and dedication. When Selena finally returned, I confronted her. "Give back Eli's money and his laptop right now," I demanded. She smirked dismissively. "Or what? You'll kick me out." I wanted to react impulsively, but I knew violence wouldn't solve anything. Selena's toxic behavior was tearing apart our family, and I knew I had to protect us, even if it meant making a difficult decision about Marcus's daughter. Right then, I resolved that Selena had to leave. When Marcus arrived home, I wasted no time in telling him what Selena had done. She stole from her own brother after we welcomed her into our home. "I want her out, Marcus. Today," I insisted firmly. Marcus looked torn. "I know Selena's actions are unacceptable, but she's still my daughter. If we kick her out now, she'll have nowhere to go. So we just let her keep taking advantage of us," I exclaimed. "She's manipulating you, Marcus. Can't you see that?" "Please give me a little more time to talk to her," Marcus pleaded. "I believe with some clear boundaries, Selena can change." I sighed in frustration. Marcus's paternal instincts were clouding his judgment about Selena's behavior, but I knew I had to handle this delicately to avoid straining our marriage. "Okay," I relented. "1 week. If Selena's behavior doesn't show significant improvement by then, she has to leave." Marcus reluctantly agreed to give Selena more time, hoping against hope that she would change. But my hopes were quickly dashed as Selena's behavior spiraled out of control over the next few days. She stayed out all night partying, slept until noon, and even helped herself to my jewelry, dismissing my demands for her to find a job with arrogant remarks about living rent-free. Things reached a breaking point one evening when I found her smoking on the couch. When I confronted her, she brazenly blew smoke in my face and defied me, claiming I had no authority over her. I felt sickened by Selena's manipulative behavior. She knew exactly how to push my buttons while putting on a sweet act for Marcus. But the final straw came when I received a call from my credit card company about a suspicious $2,000 charge at a luxury store in Leh. It was clear Selena had used my card without permission, racking up more debt in a week than Eli and I spent on groceries in a month. When Marcus returned home, I couldn't contain my rage any longer. "Your daughter is tearing us apart. I want her out of this house tonight," I demanded, trembling with anger. Marcus looked worn down. "You're right. I wanted to believe Selena could change, but she's completely out of control. It's either her or me, Marcus," I stated firmly. "Choose carefully." He pulled me into a comforting hug. "You and Eli will always come first. I just hope we can get through this without tearing our family apart." We gathered with Selena, and Marcus firmly told her she had to leave immediately. She exploded in anger, hurling insults and accusations. I remained quiet, letting Marcus handle his distraught daughter. When Selena stormed off to pack, Marcus slumped in defeat. "I'm so sorry I brought this chaos into our home," he lamented. "You and Eli mean everything to me. No matter how long it takes, we'll heal from Selena's influence." I squeezed his hand, finding solace in his resolve. With unity, we would overcome this trial. Selena's destructive behavior wouldn't break our family. The weeks following Selena's departure were tense. Marcus attempted to reach out to her multiple times, but she refused to respond. I knew he wrestled with guilt, blaming himself for her actions. I reassured him we had made the right decision. Selena had wreaked havoc like a tornado. We changed the locks and dealt with the fallout from my stolen credit card, thankfully resolved with the bank's support in reversing the fraudulent charges. Gradually, our lives returned to normalcy. My heart sank as I opened the letter, shattering the fragile peace we had started to rebuild. It was from a bank I didn't recognize, thanking me for opening a new credit account. Panic set in as I read through the attached paperwork. Someone had fraudulently applied for a $155,000 personal loan in my name, forging my signature, money that had already been deposited into an unknown account. The implications were staggering. This amount of debt could devastate our family, and there was only one person I suspected could do such a thing. When Marcus returned home, I thrust the letter into his hands. "Your daughter is trying to ruin us. We need to call the police right away." His eyes widened in shock as he scanned the letter. My God, I knew Selena had issues, but identity theft? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. This is all my fault. I failed her as a father. My anger towards Selena began to soften as I saw how deeply Marcus was affected by her betrayal. Sitting beside him, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did everything you could for her in such difficult circumstances. Some people just refuse to change. Now we have to focus on protecting ourselves and Eli. Will you call the police to report the fraud?" Marcus sighed heavily but nodded. "You're right. I need to do the responsible thing, no matter how painful." We spent an agonizing hour on the phone with the police and the bank, filing reports about Selena's crime. It was surreal to think that the sweet girl I had seen in Marcus's wedding photos could turn into such a heartless criminal. The bank investigator informed us that the loan had been taken out locally, suggesting Selena was still nearby. The thought sent chills down my spine. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Marcus. "We'll work with the bank to invalidate that loan. They believe we're the victims in this." "I hope you're right," Marcus murmured, his voice heavy with worry. "Because if not, this could ruin us financially. We might even lose the house." The unspoken fear hung thick between us. Selena wasn't satisfied with just tarnishing her father's trust. She seemed determined to dismantle our entire family, no matter the cost. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I repeated a silent mantra. Selena's schemes couldn't touch us, no matter how hard she tried. Goodness and truth would prevail, but beneath the surface a cold anger simmered. If Selena continued to threaten my loved ones, I was prepared to do whatever it took to stop her. In the following weeks, there was no word from Selena. The bank's investigation into the fraudulent loan bought us some time before any debts were due. Police attempts to locate her proved fruitless. Selena had vanished without a trace, leaving Marcus to comb through online records in a desperate search for clues. It was clear she knew how to evade capture, an adept manipulator and elusive figure. Then on a sunny Saturday, our world shifted once more. Marcus was away at a teaching conference for the weekend, so Eli and I decided to catch a movie together. But upon returning home, a sense of dread washed over me immediately. The front door stood open. Heart pounding, I hurried inside, Eli right beside me. "Wait in the hall," I instructed Eli firmly. If Selena was inside, I wanted to shield him from any danger. Moving cautiously, I entered the dimly lit rooms. At first glance, nothing appeared out of place. Then I reached Ellie's bedroom. The sight was devastating. Drawers thrown open, mattress overturned, and the closet in disarray. Eli rushed in beside me, gasping in disbelief. That's when I noticed the paper on his bed, scrawled with a mocking message. "College fund gone. Oops, better start bussing tables, loser brother." Anger surged through me, blurring my vision. The college fund Marcus and I had painstakingly saved for Ellie's future, nearly $20,000, was stolen. Selena had callously used it for her own needs while leaving hurtful insults for her brother, whom she had never bothered to know. I heard a choked sob from Eli, his face drained of color, tears welling in his eyes. "All the money you saved up for me, gone." I hugged my kind, hard-working son, feeling heartbroken for him. "We'll find a way through this," I promised, but inside, I was furious. That money was meant to help Eli have a better life, but Selena had taken it all away without any care. When Marcus came home, he was devastated by the break-in and Ellie's loss. My usually calm husband was furious, just like me. Our savings were gone, our home broken into, and our son hurt for no reason. It was too much. Selena needed to face consequences before she hurt more innocent people. The next evening, ignoring Marcus's warnings, I drove to the old motel where people said Selena was staying. I found her beat-up car parked outside. I knocked on her door until she opened it, smirking when she saw me. "Well, if it isn't Saint Lena, here to lecture me about morals." I slapped her hard across the face. "You're a terrible person," I said angrily. "Didn't ruining our lives once satisfy you?" Selena's smirk disappeared. "You'll pay for that," she snapped, trying to attack me. We struggled briefly before I pushed her back inside and slammed the door in her angry face. I walked away, shaking but determined. Today, Selena's reign of terror ended one way or another. I had given her chances to change, but some people are rotten to the core beyond redemption. Trying to save them risks dragging yourself down too. Selena had shown herself to be heartless and incapable of doing any good. Now it was time to cut her out of our lives for good before she could hurt us again. In the weeks that followed, I nervously waited for Selena's revenge. Marcus tightened security around our house. I kept Eli home from school, afraid to leave him alone until Selena was caught. But as time went on without any sign of her, we started to relax. Maybe she had realized she couldn't stay in town without facing consequences for what she'd done. Late one night, I woke up to blaring fire alarms. Marcus and I rushed to Ellie's room and found it filled with smoke, flames climbing up one wall. We grabbed Eli and hurried outside just before the fire consumed his bedroom. While firefighters put out the blaze, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident. Selena had made a final desperate move for revenge. The police investigation confirmed my suspicions. Traces of gasoline had been found on one side of the house, deliberately set alight. It was a chilling realization that Selena had intended to destroy us as we slept, if not for our timely awakening. Marcus looked exhausted as he spoke to the investigators. Our daughter, Selena Rogers, is your prime suspect for arson. She's already committed identity theft and burglary against us. This fire was her latest attempt to harm my family. After discovering Selena was committing more serious crimes, the police finally took action. They got security camera footage showing someone in Selena's car leaving the area just before firefighters arrived. Arrest warrants were issued for Selena, and her name and photo were shown in the news as a dangerous criminal. Marcus even asked Selena to surrender, promising she'd get a fair trial. But Selena stayed hidden, leaving us stuck in uncertainty, fearing she might strike again. I stayed indoors with Eli, keeping a rifle and fire extinguishers close by. She had already taken so much from us, I wouldn't let her take our peace of mind too. Then one evening I got a surprise call from the detective leading the case, urgently telling me, "You need to check the news now. They just caught Selena Rogers." I rushed Marcus and Eli to the TV, our hands shaking. The news showed Selena in handcuffs outside a pawn shop, stolen things from our house scattered around her, jewelry and electronics. She cursed and spat at reporters while police put her in a car. Selena had thought she couldn't be caught, but she slipped up and got caught red-handed. Reporters talked about Selena's shocking crimes against her own family. Her reputation was ruined, and everyone saw the real monster behind her pretty face. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. That night, with Selena locked up and our home safe, we finally slept peacefully. The coming weeks would be hard, cleaning up the mess Selena made, but the worst was over. Her lies couldn't hurt us anymore. A new day had come, full of hope and promise. In the weeks after Selena was arrested, life slowly returned to normal. With Selena facing serious charges in jail, the heaviness that had burdened our home began to lift. I took Eli out to celebrate his birthday at his favorite restaurants, and Marcus and I spent evenings reminiscing about happier times before Selena came into our lives. We started making plans to repair the fire damage and recover financially. But looming court dates brought anxiety. Marcus struggled with the thought of testifying against his own daughter, despite their strained relationship. I tried to stay strong, reminding myself of the pain Selena had caused us. Then came shocking news. Selena had been involved in a violent fight with another inmate in jail and had died as a result. Marcus was devastated. He withdrew into our room for days, grappling with guilt. Meanwhile, I focused on supporting Eli, who, despite everything, felt saddened by the loss of a sister he barely knew. In the following weeks, we learned disturbing details about Selena's final days. The inmate she fought with claimed Selena had boasted about how she enjoyed deceiving people and wished she had stolen even more from us. Hearing Selena's callous words only hardened my resolve. She had shown no remorse for the pain she caused. In the end, her own greed and aggression had led to her downfall. With Selena no longer around, her case quickly fell apart. The bank canceled her fake loan applications, lifting that heavy debt off our shoulders. The police recovered some of our stolen money from her places. Meanwhile, our community rallied behind us once Selena's crimes came to light, offering sympathy and raising funds to help Eli with his college tuition. Their kindness overwhelmed me. After being trapped in Selena's lies and isolation, the support of true friends felt like escaping a nightmare. Marcus felt it too. We weren't alone. Good people could stand against evil together. On the anniversary of Selena's passing, we visited her grave for the first and only time. Marcus knelt beside her simple gravestone, quietly saying a prayer. I stood with Eli, giving them space. "She wasn't always like this," Eli said softly. "Do you think if she had made different choices, she could have found happiness?" I held my wise son close, embracing his insight. Everyone chooses their own path. Selena's led to destruction, but we're moving forward now, into the light. Marcus joined us, his demeanor finally calm. He took my hand with a gentle smile. "Thank you for staying by my side," he said. "Your love guided me through the darkness." Together, we walked away from Selena's troubled legacy toward a future full of promise. In the months following Selena's passing, our family began to heal. We repaired the fire damage, recovered stolen money, and settled debts. Slowly, we reclaimed what Selena had tried to take from us. Yet some wounds ran deeper. I woke from nightmares of fire consuming our home. Marcus withdrew into solitude, wrestling with guilt, while Eli grew more reserved, startled by every sound and keeping his door locked. That's when I suggested we start seeing a family counselor. Initially, Marcus hesitated, feeling ashamed about needing help. But eventually, he agreed that it was essential for us to heal fully. Our counseling sessions became a source of profound release. We discussed feelings of betrayal, violation, and anger. The counselor taught us techniques to manage anxiety and PTSD, encouraging us to express our emotions rather than keeping them inside, which had strained my relationship with Marcus, who tended to brood. Through these sessions, I discovered depths of pain in Marcus that I had not fully understood before. He confessed that part of his desperate attempts to help Selena stemmed from regret over his perceived failures as a father during his divorce. The counselor helped him see that his intentions were misguided rather than malicious, easing his sense of shame. For Eli, the most comfort came from returning to normal routines. He rejoined school sports teams, volunteered at a homeless shelter, and started working part-time at an ice cream parlor. Focusing on these activities and engaging with the community helped him feel more empowered and less helpless. 6 months later, with our counselor's blessing, we decided to put our troubles with Selena behind us. Using the last of the recovered money, we took a family trip to Hawaii. We enjoyed stunning beaches and delicious dinners, free from tension or drama, just cherishing our time together. On our last night, Marcus and I renewed our vows on the beach at sunset, with Eli proudly officiating. Looking at my two incredible men, my heart swelled with love and pride. Selena had tried to tear us apart, but instead, we emerged stronger. While scars remain, we wear them proudly, refusing to let past pain define us. Our family embodies resilience. During the flight home, I wrote a journal entry reflecting on our journey, which I later shared with Marcus and Eli. The past year brought immense challenges but also profound growth. We've grown closer, our wounds turning into wisdom. Selena's actions reopened old wounds and inflicted new ones, but we've stitched ourselves together, becoming stronger. Our imperfect family doesn't just survive, we thrive. Darkness fades, healing begins, and the enduring light remains. Later that week, I stored my journal in a keepsake box. The last remnants of Selena's havoc, court documents, financial statements, police reports, were discarded. Marcus held me close, saying, "It's finally over. Now we can build something beautiful from the ashes." I smiled at him and embraced Eli. The storm had passed. Ahead of us stretched a bright future, and together we would walk forward, facing the light.
He's retiring, so to celebrate, I'm taking our parents to France starting today. I'm borrowing your platinum card for the trip. We're going to enjoy ourselves using your credit card. What a trip. What are you talking about? Exactly what I said. No, I don't understand what you mean by exactly what I said. Please explain. We need to hurry. I understand. We'll leave soon. Sorry, I have to go now. I'll hear the details when I get back. Just one thing though, the credit card won't work. Huh? My jobless husband Parker took my credit card to take our parents on a trip. I've put up with a lot from Parker, but this seems like the perfect chance. I'm going to make sure Parker learns a lesson, and when he returns from the trip, he'll have some big regrets. I'm Lee, a 32-year-old employee at a major company. After graduating from a top university, I landed a great job and have been doing well. Even though I'm only 32, I make enough money to support Parker, who doesn't work, and a child, if we had one. But that's just a possibility. We've been married for 2 years and don't have kids yet, though we're thinking about it. Despite having a good job and income, I'm not happy with my newly life. The part about having a child is just an idea, but Parker not working is real. I'm not hungry for dinner because I had snacks. That's fine, but what about your job search? I didn't go for an interview today. I just stayed home looking at job websites. Parker quit his job a year ago and has been looking for work since then. Actually, he's been doing part-time jobs but doesn't keep them for long. He starts a job, quits shortly after, relaxes for a while, then looks for another part-time job. You're looking at part-time jobs again, aren't you? I'm looking at both full-time and part-time. Why don't you stop looking for part-time jobs and focus on finding a full-time position? I know, but there is a right time for everything. I wish Parker would find a steady job, but there's a reason he can't be pushed too hard. He quit his last job because of a conflict over work policies with his boss. That boss was notoriously difficult. Parker stood up to him as the office representative with his colleagues' support. But when the conflict escalated, his colleagues sided with the boss, not Parker. As a result, Parker lost his boss's approval, felt betrayed by his colleagues, and found it hard to stay, so he left the company. Parker, dinner's ready. Can you bring it here? After quitting his job, Parker became withdrawn, staying in his room. After about 2 weeks, he began to come out and help with household chores. I'll do the dishes. Really? Thanks. Then it's all yours. Yeah, I've got plenty of time. Parker joked, but his smile didn't seem genuine. Yet, another 2 weeks later, he started looking for a new job. I have an interview today. Is it your top choice? Yeah, I'm going to nail this one and make a fresh start. I'm rooting for you. Do your best. A month after quitting his job, Parker started looking for work more seriously. But even after another month, he couldn't find a job. Why do they keep rejecting me? It's all because of my last company. Don't lose heart. You'll find something good. Of course I'm frustrated. I didn't do anything wrong. Parker may not be completely blameless, but what happened at his previous job wasn't entirely his fault either. However, quitting due to interpersonal issues doesn't impress potential employers. It feels like nothing I do is right anymore. That's not true. You have an interview tomorrow. Let's update your resume. It's pointless. I'm not going to that interview. Repeated rejections took a toll on Parker, and eventually he became defiant. One day, I returned home to find torn-up resumes scattered on the living room floor, knowing his interview hadn't gone well. Carefully choosing my words, I said, "Can you throw that trash in the bin? I'm done." Done with what? Job hunting. We can manage on Layla's income, right? I don't need to work. It was true, we could get by on my salary alone. Some people choose not to work and excel as full-time homemakers, but that wasn't Parker's situation. He seemed to be avoiding reality. Understanding his reluctance after his rough experience at his last job and the fruitless job search, I decided to be patient with him for a while. Parker, you still haven't found a job. What's your plan? I've worked hard in the past. This is just a long break. I'm not just sitting around, I'm preparing for the future. That's good to hear. Living near my in-laws, Parker's mom, Layla, and dad, Nicholas, started visiting us more after he quit his job. They were probably worried about him. When they heard Parker was preparing for his next job, they seemed relieved, but that was far from the truth. The beer's running out today. Can you grab some on your way home? It's running out again? You drink too much? Try to cut back a bit. Fine, I won't ask again. I'll get it myself. Parker wasn't studying or job hunting. He spent his days watching TV and drinking beer. He probably didn't want others to know he was unemployed. I decided not to tell my in-laws the truth to spare Parker's feelings, even though he hadn't looked for a job in over 3 months. Finally, I decided to bring it up. Parker, maybe it's time to start job hunting again. You seem more settled now. What? It's only been 6 months since my last job. You want me to work again after what happened? I just think the break has been quite long. Stop nagging. You can't understand my feelings when your job is going well. I have my own struggles, you know. Everyone faces work problems and relationship issues. We can work through this together. I understand. I'll start looking for a job, okay? Parker walked out during our conversation. My words seemed to have hurt him, but his agreement to job hunt felt like progress. I planned to apologize when he felt better. I got a job because you pushed me. That's great. Where? At a nearby supermarket. So you'll need to learn and work hard, right? It's just part-time. No need to work too hard. Part-time or not, any job is important. Do you have a problem with that? I wanted to say more to Parker, but I decided to see how even a small step like this could help him recover. I chose to wait and observe. I'm home. Parker, you're back. How's the job at the pub? I quit the supermarket part-time. Why? It hasn't been that long. A college student there was being bossy, always telling me to put the vegetable boxes at the bottom in storage. It felt like harassment. That student was probably just showing Parker how to do the job. In any workplace, even a college student might be more experienced. Parker kept finding and quitting jobs, unable to stick with any. So Parker hasn't been able to keep a job for long, and it's already been a year. Parker, what job are you doing now? I'm working part-time at a pub. I've never worked in food and beverage before, but it's interesting, and I think I finally found my calling. Really? That's great, but isn't the income from a part-time job in a restaurant kind of low? That's fine. I'm currently apprenticing, aiming to go independent. So, you plan to own your own place someday? Exactly. The income's small now, but I'm working hard towards my goal. Then take this. Treat yourself to something nice for once. Parker still puts on a good show in front of his parents, but as always, it's all lies. He quit the pub job 3 days after this conversation, deceiving everyone and even taking allowance from his parents. This time, I couldn't help but feel disappointed in my husband, so I decided to be firmer than before. Hey, Parker. Later, please. I'm at a good part in the movie. You can pause it. I grabbed the remote control from the table, paused the movie, and started a conversation. It's frustrating when you pause at the best part. What is it? Parker, you're 35 now, right? You know that's prime working age. Don't you think about the future? Spending all day at home, drinking, and just watching TV. The future? There are plenty of 35-year-olds not working. Many people enjoy life without a job. True, work isn't everything, but those people have something else they're dedicated to. Do you have something like that? Yeah. I know you're upset about me not working. I'll look for another part-time job. Parker seems set on only working part-time. Considering his reasons for leaving his job and his struggles with job hunting, I've been careful not to upset him. But it's time for Parker to get back on track. I need to be firmer. One day at work, I received a text from Parker. Dad's retiring, so we're going to France to celebrate starting today. I'm borrowing your platinum card. We're going to enjoy ourselves on your credit card. I panicked and called him immediately. What do you mean, a trip? Just what I said. I don't understand. Just what I said. Please explain. There are so many things wrong here. It's okay to celebrate Nicholas's retirement, but Parker should have talked to me before using my money and borrowing my credit card. More like taking without asking. And why am I paying for a trip to France that I'm not even going on? Parker probably told his parents he paid for it from his savings, my credit card. Just thinking about it makes me so angry, but one thing Parker said stands out. You mentioned borrowing a credit card. Do you mean the one from our house? Yeah, why? I do have a platinum card. Some people think you need a high income for it, but that's not true. Credit history, stable income, and other factors matter, and you can get one in your 30s. It has a high annual fee, but I use it for the benefits and points. However, that credit card is in my wallet. So you took the credit card from home? Yeah, so I'm counting on you for the payment. Parker, excited about his trip to France, spoke to me in a challenging tone. I've been patient with Parker for a long time, but now it seems like the right moment to take action. Parker thinks he's smart for taking my credit card and acting cheerful about it, but he's about to realize otherwise. What are you waiting for? We need to leave. Got it. Sorry, I have to go now. I'll hear the details when I get back. Just one more thing. That credit card you took won't work. What? That can't be right. It's under Lila's name, and it expires this month. It's close, but it shouldn't be an issue. You're lying, right, Lila? You're lying to stop me from using the card, aren't you? That's such an obvious lie. Yes, it does expire this month. That's why I've already received a new credit card. What does that mean? So I have 2 credit cards to use now. Sometimes, when a new card is activated, the old one stops working. I've already started using the new card, so the one you took won't work. What? Are you kidding me? You think I'm lying. If you don't believe me, I can send you the URL to the credit card website, or you can just try using the card. It would be funny to see you try to pay with a card that doesn't work. This credit card really won't work. Hey, hurry up. I hear his parents calling him in the background, but Parker, realizing the credit card won't work, seems too flustered to respond to them. What should I do? I told them I pay for everything except the round-trip travel. Oh, they covered the flight? Yes, Dad felt bad about covering all the trip costs. What should I do? I'm about to take a cab, and I don't even have money for that. That's not my problem. You said you would pay for everything except the flight. Using my credit card in the first place was wrong. You should pay with your own money. How can I? I don't have any money right now, Parker. You haven't been taking work seriously. It's your fault for trying to impress, taking your parents on a trip without any money. I'm at work, so I have to hang up now. I just wanted to tell you about the credit card. Wait, I hung up and returned to work. Parker, unable to pay for even the cab, would have to come clean with his parents. That evening, after I finished work, I received a call from my Layla. I heard from Parker. He tried to use your credit card and lied about working. I'm sorry for the trouble. No, don't apologize, my Layla. I'm sorry for the inconvenience with the credit card. Are you okay with the money? We'll cover the cost of this trip when we return. I'll make sure Parker apologizes and starts looking for a job immediately. I'm sorry, my Layla, but I'm considering divorcing Parker. Divorce? Because of this? It's part of it, but Parker has been taking money from me for a while. What? I stopped giving Parker money to limit his drinking. He got a part-time job and started buying his own alcohol. But his part-time salary wouldn't cover daily drinking. Parker was taking money from my wallet to buy alcohol. He repeatedly took amounts ranging from $4 to $40. Over a year, the total became significant. I hadn't been tough on Parker, hoping he would change, but when he took my credit card for his trip, it wasn't just about $42 anymore. This increase in what he took made me believe he had no intention of changing. I understand. Should I inform Parker about the divorce? Could you just tell him I want a divorce? We'll discuss the rest when he gets home. About an hour later, the next morning after my conversation with my Layla, Parker called. He must have learned about the divorce from my Layla, though I had asked her to wait until he returned to discuss it. Feeling drained, I chose not to answer his call. When I returned home from work that evening, I found Parker already there. He had cut his trip short. I'll start working seriously now. Please don't leave me, he pleaded as soon as I entered the living room. Seeing Parker, he'd immediately apologized. His remorse seemed genuine, but it came too late. He had a whole year to change, yet he was asking for another chance now. Despite my repeated warnings, he had wasted every opportunity. I'm not going to give Parker another chance because he gave up on me. My decision is final. Can you leave? Please don't say that. If you won't leave, should I move out? Only if you can afford the rent here. Parker fell silent. He didn't even have the money for next month's rent, let alone any income. My words and the reality of the impending divorce seemed to sink in for him. With nothing to take, Parker appeared to leave the house, likely heading to his parents' place. I briefly considered asking if he had money for transportation, but Parker isn't a child. He should handle his own affairs. Sadly, I watched him go. After leaving our house, Parker went to his parents' home. Later, I received a call from my Layla. They allowed Parker to stay for one night, but asked him to leave the next day. They were concerned he might become too dependent on them if he stayed longer. It must have been tough for them as parents to make this decision, but they felt it was necessary for Parker's sake. Cast out by his parents, Parker returned to our house, pleading with me. Please help me. I've got nowhere to go and no money. That's the result of your own actions. You need to handle this yourself. Everyone faces difficulties, and while it's okay to seek help sometimes, all you've done in the past year is neglect your responsibilities and do as you please. I didn't allow Parker into the house and turned him away from the doorstep. The divorce eventually went through. Parker was hesitant, but with his parents' support, it happened faster than expected. I'm not sure what happened to Parker afterward, but he's likely still moving from job to job and making excuses. I thought I would feel lonely without Parker, but I didn't. His attitude had been stressful, and I was always careful not to upset him. No longer needing to accommodate him, I've been living more comfortably. Unconsciously, our life together was a burden. I'm relieved I didn't let myself get dragged down with him. Now, I can live without having to cater to anyone else. You're not needed anymore, so please go. Why would you say that after everything we've been through? This house is enough. I'm going to live here with my daughter and the others. I worked hard for 15 years to save up and buy this place. I chose a big condo so we could all live together because she wanted to move in. But then my husband stepped in. Why are you surprised? Your job year is done. Thanks for everything up to now. Are you serious? I looked straight at my husband, trying hard to stay calm despite my mixed feelings. Of course, if you don't want to leave, we can get a divorce. Do it quickly. Hearing this, I made up my mind. My husband is unemployed and doesn't understand what would happen if we divorced now. I realized he was a disappointment and I wanted to leave as soon as possible. Understood. If that's how it is, I'll leave. Leave right now, okay? I'd be so happy not to see your face again." They both gave me the ugliest smiles I had ever seen. There was no need to hold back against a husband and mother-in-law like this. I wanted them to feel the consequences immediately, so I sold the high-rise condo right away. My name is Sandra, and I turned 39 this year. I've been married to Robert for 4 years. We used to work at the same company, but we weren't that close. Then 4 years ago, something changed. Huh? Sandra? Robert, is that you? Long time no see. What are you doing here? Actually, I quit my job today. What? Why? I quit because it was finally time to chase a dream I've always had. You know, I've been drawing cartoons for a while, right? I finally made my debut. Seriously? That's amazing. Show me sometime. Back then, I didn't have any special feelings for him, but I was happy he praised me. Later, I found out that after quitting the company, Robert started his own business. The last time we saw each other was in our 20s, and at that time, things were going well for me at work. If you're okay with it, why don't we date? That's sudden, isn't it? I think we're really compatible. Robert's confession surprised me, but it didn't feel bad. I was about to turn 35 and thinking about marriage too. But I'm at the age where I want to get married. Then let's get married. What, really? I was overwhelmed by how quickly things were moving. Is that a no? Thank you. Yes. Before I knew it, I had accepted his proposal. I went ahead with it on impulse, and though I was full of anxieties, they proved to be unfounded. You've worked hard here. Want some coffee? Thanks. Another all-nighter? Yeah, the deadline is close. Don't push yourself too hard. Both my marriage and job were going well. In fact, things were so good that I wondered if it was okay for them to be this perfect. Robert understood my work and even took care of household chores when I was busy. There was just one thing that bothered me. By the way, how's work lately? Huh? Oh, it's fine. I've had some free time recently. Why? You've been coming home early and doing all the housework. I'm just doing it because I like to. Don't worry about it, okay? We used to talk about work a lot, but for the last few weeks, he hadn't mentioned anything about his job. I believed him when he said everything was okay and didn't ask more questions. Looking back, that might have been a mistake. Before I knew it, nearly 4 years had passed. My job was going well, and there was even talk of turning my work into comics and animations. Then, I started wanting to have our own home. I've been thinking about getting our own place. What do you think? A house? That sounds great. Oh, but is something wrong? Robert looked down with a regretful expression. I prepared myself, sensing something unpleasant was coming. I know this is sudden, but is there any way my mom could live with us? What? Your mother? She's alone now, and I'm a bit worried about her. Since losing my father-in-law 2 years ago, my mother-in-law seemed to have lost her spirit. It felt like there was a big hole in her heart. I was indeed worried about leaving her alone from now on. Okay, but it will take time to build a house. Maybe a condo would be better. Thank you. Just agreeing to live with her is enough for me. You can decide the rest. Then that's what we'll do. So in between work, I visited various condos since we were going to live together. I wanted something spacious and comfortable. I had savings from 15 years of frugal living. A month after starting the search for a condo, I signed the contract. Today, really? What kind is it? This one. I showed my husband the brochure for the condo I had chosen. I was confident he would be pleased. Is this a high-rise luxury condo? Yes, it is. I thought we might as well. He probably didn't expect me to choose a high-rise. Although surprised, his eyes sparkled like a child who had just received a new toy. Mom will definitely be happy with this. I hope so. With this, a new life, including my mother-in-law, was about to begin, filled with a little anxiety and great anticipation. However, I would soon realize that it was a mistake as soon as we started living with her. Sandra, thanks for letting me stay here. This place is amazing. Oh, it's no big deal. I just did what anyone would do. Everything was fine for a while, but 3 months later, my mother-in-law's behavior suddenly changed a lot. Sorry, could you clean my room? My back hurts. I'm sorry, Mom, I have to work now. Then my mother-in-law said something completely different from her usual kindness. Work? You just stay in your room all day while Robert does all the housework, don't you? Robert and I decided that together. No more excuses. Just do it now, please. I didn't understand why she was acting so differently. All I knew then was that not doing what she asked would only cause more problems, so I cleaned the room thoroughly as she wanted. "I'll be in the living room. Let me know when you're done." She didn't help at all and just relaxed in comfort. Why did I have to do this? I felt frustrated. "I'm finished. At last. Can't you clean a bit faster?" "I'm sorry." "Well, okay then. Please make sure to do it regularly from now on." In the end, my mother-in-law went back to her room without thanking me. I was angry at her demanding attitude, but I kept quiet, fearing more complaints if I resisted. I told my husband about it. "My mom? Why would she do that? I'll talk to her." "Really? I find it hard to talk back to her." "Don't worry, I'll handle it." His reassurance made me feel better. True enough, from the next day onwards, my mother-in-law stopped being so harsh with me. I thought I could now concentrate on work as usual until a week later when I returned home from a meeting. I'm back. When I walked in, I noticed unfamiliar shoes by the door. As I approached the living room, I overheard voices. "Hey, where's Sandra today?" "Oh, she's at a meeting. It's amazing though. She's become a successful cartoon artist at her age." "Yeah, it's impressive. Why do you sound so proud?" It was Robert's sister, Christina, who was visiting. Just as I was about to enter the room, I heard more of their conversation. "By the way, Mom, you've been quieter lately." "Oh yes, it's more amusing to knock her down when she feels secure, isn't it? And Robert, you agree, right?" "Well, if she can't work anymore, it would be a problem, right? Sandra is the one bringing in money for us after all." "Oh right." I stood there, stunned not only by what was said, but by the realization that my husband and mother-in-law were plotting something together. From then on, life became unbearable. "Did you discuss that thing? About work?" I didn't think it needed to be brought up. "You always do this." "What? What are you talking about?" Christina asked innocently, clearly unaware of the conversation's subject. I was also clueless and eager to hear Robert's explanation. "Well, it couldn't be helped. Actually, the company I was running went bankrupt shortly after we got married." "What? You never mentioned that. That's terrible," Christina exclaimed. "I've been through a lot, but I was lucky. I never expected that when I suggested living with Mom, Sandra would opt for such an upscale condo." When Robert admitted this to me, instead of surprise, I felt a surge of anger because I realized I had been deceived. Knowing he had hidden this and acted normal made me feel sick to my stomach. At that moment, I regretted everything deeply. If only I hadn't ignored the signs of change in my husband. But I couldn't dwell on regrets forever, and I started considering when to leave. "Maybe it's time," Robert remarked. "Time for what?" Christina asked. "Well, that's for another time," Robert replied casually. Unable to listen any longer, I burst through the door. They were shocked, clearly not expecting me to return. "What's going on?" I demanded. Seeing my husband and mother-in-law flustered, I almost laughed but held it back. "You startled me. If you were back, you should have said something," Robert stammered. "I did say I'm home, but maybe you were too caught up in your conversation," I retorted. "Well, never mind. Sandra, come sit here. Let's have some coffee together." "Yes, thank you," I replied politely, then engaged in meaningless conversation. It felt like it had been ages since I'd endured such dullness. After about an hour, Christina announced she was leaving. I should head home now. "You could stay a bit longer." "I'd like to, but I have plans after this." "Well, if that's the case, I understand. Let me walk you out part of the way." Christina probably sensed my feelings towards Robert and his mother. Maybe that's why she wanted to get away from the situation. As Christina was leaving, I stopped her. "Thanks for coming today. Did you have a good time?" Yes," Christina replied nervously, as if fearing criticism. Seeing her uneasy expression, I decided it was best to give her a heads up. "I wanted to tell you something, Christina. You shouldn't trust them too much." "What do you mean?" "About what we talked about earlier?" Christina's expression turned pale as she seemed to grasp that my husband and mother-in-law were the ones I was warning her about. I understand. See you around." From then on, as far as I know, Christina never visited us again. My mind was consumed with thoughts of how to exact revenge on them. One day, as part of my routine, I checked the mailbox and found a letter addressed to Robert. The moment I saw it, I couldn't help but laugh, thinking it might be useful. "I'm heading to work. Have a good day." How insincere. Curious about where he was really going, I decided to follow him. I had observed as he idled in a park for a while before heading to a casino. I took photos to have evidence for later use. He was unemployed and yet engaged in activities like this. Who made this awful meal? My mother-in-law's criticism had started again, likely sparked by our earlier conversation. I had been pondering ways to retaliate against her. I made it. Since Robert doesn't cook and no one else could have, it had to be me. How dare you serve something like this? You didn't put poison in it, did you? Clean this up. Her words were harsh, almost refreshing. I was angry, but that wasn't my main concern. Unable to come up with a plan on my own, I decided to call my mother. I was nervous about her reaction, but getting back at my husband and mother-in-law was more important. Hello, Mom. You sound upset. What's wrong? Actually, I proceeded to tell my mother everything that had been happening. I had expected her to be critical, but instead she was sympathetic. So that's what's been going on. You've been through a lot. Her words brought tears to my eyes. But what should I do now? From what you've told me, the condo is in your name, right? Yes, but... And it seems they both like living there. Why not just sell it? Sell it? The idea hadn't occurred to me. My mother's suggestion struck a chord. I started imagining how my husband and mother-in-law would react to losing their home. Life would certainly become challenging for my unemployed husband and mother-in-law. It's actually a good idea, isn't it? It sure is, but it's amazing how you can say that with a laugh. Well, it's your decision, Sandra. Just know that we're here for you. Yeah, hearing you say that gives me more strength. Feel free to reach out anytime. I couldn't stop thinking about my mother's advice. One evening after dinner and cleaning up, Robert said he needed to talk. Following his instructions, I sat down on the sofa where both Robert and my mother-in-law were smirking. I had a sinking feeling about this. So what's this talk about? I asked cautiously. My mother-in-law began, You're no longer needed here, so please leave. Why would you say that after everything? This house is. She interrupted me sharply, ignoring my frustration. Enough. I'm going to live here with Christina and the others. Why with Christina and the others? I asked, recalling the conversation they had at home that day. It seemed this was the fun they had planned. Robert then added, Why the surprised look? Your role here is finished. Thanks for everything up to now. Are you serious? I stared directly at him, my emotions overwhelming me. Fine, if you want me to leave, we can get divorced. Let's get it over with. Upon hearing my words, I made my decision. Robert, being unemployed, seemed oblivious to the consequences of divorce. What a disappointment. I wanted to leave that place as soon as possible, and I had prepared for this moment. Fine, if that's how it is, I'll leave. Leave right now? Fine. I'd be thrilled not to see your face again, Robert sneered. They both wore the most sinister smiles I had ever seen. There was no reason to hold back anymore against such a husband and mother-in-law. I wanted to make them feel the consequences right away. Packing only the essentials, I walked out of the house. They watched me leave, but I felt no sadness or regret. Since we're getting divorced anyway, you handle the divorce papers. I'm not worried about this condo. You can take care of it, I said calmly. Without waiting for their response, I walked away without looking back. They could say whatever they wanted. For now, I decided to return to my parents' home. I'm on my way home. So, you've made your decision? Yes, I might be a bit of a burden for a while. Your father and I are here for you. Take your time coming back. At home, my parents welcomed me with unchanged warmth. Seeing their faces, I felt a profound sense of relief. Welcome back. I'm home. It's been a while since you've been here. Take it easy today. Thank you. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in a long while. The next day, I wasted no time. I prepared the divorce papers and headed straight to the real estate agent. It was better to sell the condo than to leave it for my husband and mother-in-law, who had no income and would struggle without a home. This condo is in demand. We should find a buyer quickly. That's good to hear. Please take care of it. Consider it done. A month later, the real estate agent informed me that a buyer was interested in the condo. My ex-husband and mother-in-law were still living there, and during that month, I had successfully finalized the divorce. They were now strangers to me, and I eagerly anticipated meeting these two oblivious individuals. The potential buyer wants to view the property soon. Got it. Can I be there for the showing? That would be very helpful. Please join us." The day of the showing finally arrived. As I opened the front door, Robert burst out. "Hey, who let you in? Who are you people?" Apparently he hadn't noticed me, so I stepped forward. "Long time no see." "Huh? Why are you here?" "Funny you should ask. After all, this condo is in my name." "What?" It seemed he hadn't understood the situation yet. "Don't you get it? It means this place isn't yours to claim." "That can't be true," he stammered. Then my mother-in-law appeared, which I thought was perfect timing. I decided to confront both of them right then and there. "Hey, what are you doing causing a scene in someone's home? Don't just barge in here. I could call the police on you." That should be my line. "You two have no right to live here. Talking nonsense won't help you. This place belongs to us." I sighed at their stubbornness. "Could you please leave this house immediately? You're disrupting the viewing." "Viewing? Why would there be a viewing?" "Because I've put this condo up for sale. Like I said, I bought this place, so I own it." Robert seemed too furious to comprehend. "Even if what you're saying is true, where are we supposed to live? Why don't you go back to your parents' house? We tore down that old house." "Oh, that's unfortunate." "Stop joking." Robert tried to grab me. Fortunately, I dodged quickly, and he stumbled and fell dramatically. Everyone except my mother-in-law burst into laughter at his fall. "If you don't want me to call the police for trespassing, please leave. You're in the way." I looked down at him as I spoke. When I saw his face, he looked like he was on the verge of tears, finally understanding the situation. He then knelt down and begged, but nothing he could do would change my mind. "We were wrong. Please forgive us." Mom, apologize to her too. "Why should I? Apologizing won't change anything now. Can you just disappear from my sight? I won't ask again." With that, Robert, dragging his mother by the hand, fled like a defeated animal. Watching them leave like that brought an unexpected sense of relief. The viewing proceeded smoothly and the sale was finalized. I informed them both they needed to remove any remaining belongings from the condo. That was my final act of leniency. Later, I received a call from Christina. "What's going on, Christina?" "It's about my mom and what happened." Curious about their situation, since I hadn't kept track of them, I listened attentively. It seems they're living in a tiny one-room apartment now. "See, I warned you not to trust them." I've definitely learned that lesson from this experience. It turned out Christina had taken my advice and refused any further involvement with them, which is why she wasn't present during the viewing. "From now on, it's best to keep your distance from them," I advised. Yes, Christina agreed, determined to avoid any more entanglements with those two. However, not long after, Robert reached out to me again. "Can you lend me some money? Just a little." "That's your own fault for gambling and accumulating debt. I found debt collection letters addressed to you by chance. And I also had someone follow you when you lied about having a job and went out. I'm working seriously now, but I still have debts, and it's hard to make ends meet. That's not my problem. Oh, and could you pass a message to your mother? Tell her she got what she deserved." I hung up immediately, realizing they would likely face more difficult times ahead. Reflecting on these events, I considered turning this experience into a comic for my next project. It could make for an intriguing story.